Good morning, everyone. Today is Thursday, July 22nd. Yes, 2021. My name is Karen Bodenschatz. I serve as Associate Pastor at First Lutheran Church in Onalaska, Wisconsin, and this is my morning musing. So a few weeks ago, I preached, or was preparing to preach and preached on the story of John the Baptist, and specifically his death. And as I was doing that, I kept coming across the phrase that John the Baptist spoke truth to power. And I came across it enough that I became curious about that particular phrase, truth to power. Like, when did we speak truth to power? When did that come into our consciousness as a phrase? And so I looked it up and I discovered that a man by the name of Bayard Rustin, a Quaker man, coined this phrase. And but I didn't dig deeper into who he was because that just wasn't germane to what I was trying to do in my sermon. But I really wanted to learn more about him. They're building a house across the street, in case you're wondering what those noises are, if you can hear them. Anyways, I was really curious about who he was because I never heard his name, especially because he was a part of the civil rights movement, like an advisor to Dr. King part of the civil rights movement. So this week I did that. I looked him up and did some reading. I wanted to tell you a little bit about him. So Bayard Rustin was born on March 17, 1912. He was one of 12 children that were raised by his Quaker grandparents. And it was this Quaker upbringing that influenced his lifelong commitment to nonviolence. And his grandmother was participating, or did participate in the NAACP, which brought influential people into their household. People like W.E.B. Du Bois and Mary McLeod Bethune, to their home. So these people were around him as he was growing up. And so he was interested, after he graduated from high school, really interested in racial justice. And at that time, in the 1940s, the Young Communist League, that's what they were looking at, was racial justice. And so he joined that league, but would then quit that league, would leave when they shifted away from civil rights activities in 1941. This was also, in that same year, the time that he was appointed as the youth organizer for a proposed 1941 March on Washington. And that march was being proposed and organized by A. Philip Rudolph. Rustin was a part of this growing civil rights movement from early on, deeply influenced by his Quaker roots and by his grandmother's participation in the NAACP. He would be appointed a youth advisor. Oh, I said that already. He also joined the Fellowship of Reconciliation, or FOR, and co-founded the Congress for Racial Equality, all happening in the 1940s, which I find amazing and fascinating, and a little disconcerted that we don't know about this person, but there's a reason why. So it was in 1948, in search of a deeper understanding of nonviolence, that Rustin went to India for 7 weeks to study the Gandhian philosophy of nonviolence. And in 1953, despite his work, his amazing work for FOR, he was asked to resign because he had been arrested for homosexual activity. So Bayard was not only an African American, but he was also a homosexual. But that didn't slow him down. In fact, it would be in 1956 that he would become an advisor to Dr. King during the Montgomery bus boycotts. And that would begin a long relationship with Mr. Rustin being a special advisor to Dr. King, and really helping Dr. King to deepen his own understanding of nonviolence. It was Rustin who introduced him to the Gandhian way of nonviolence. And it was Rustin that would really help Dr. King figure that out and put it in such words that he would that the words that we hear now. In fact, he helped Dr. King write Strive for Freedom, but didn't want his name on it because the other leaders of the civil rights movement were not too keen on him being advisor to Dr. King because of his sexuality. And so he largely stayed in the background, but he was also key in the organization of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. So he was an incredible, influential person. He would be key in developing the Southern Christian Legal Conference. That's not the right word. Hold on, friends. I got very distracted by squirrels. The Southern Christian Leadership Conference and the 1957 prayer pilgrimage for freedom. And so I'm so thankful that I decided to take that deep dive, or take that little jaunt to figure out where speaking truth to power came from. Mr. Rustin spoke those words in 1941, or in the 1940s. He also said a few things that I found intriguing. He said, to be afraid is to behave as if the truth were not true. Been chewing on that for a little while. And then the other one was, when an individual is protesting society's refusal to acknowledge his dignity as a human being, his very act to protest confers dignity on him. So those are just two little nuggets of wisdom from our Christian brother, Bayard Rustin. He continued his work after Dr. King died, and was influential in many ways as we made our way into the 20th century, into the later days of the 20th century. And he died on August 24th, 1987. So we give thanks to God for Bayard Rustin and for the ways that he lived out his faith and the ways that it changed our world and continues to influence us, even though we don't really know about him. But that's the way it goes sometimes, isn't it? That we are influenced by people that we're not even aware of, which is why our own work as followers of Jesus is so important, because we have no idea where we'll find ourselves or where who we are will influence generations to come. I hope you have a good day, dear friends. Be well, be kind. Christ is with you.